Hey everybody, welcome to another episode. It's not Daily IoT anymore because we moved that over to Instagram. If you're not following me there, please do. I'm posting every day. It is actually Daily IoT, where I'm documenting my journey and learnings in Internet of Things, but still making content here on the YouTube channel. And today's episode was inspired by Jonam, who is I think a fairly new follower. Jonam, appreciate you reaching out and hitting me up with questions. I love hearing from people. But what Jonam wanted to see was how we could control the particle photon, specifically turn an LED on and off, but that's a simple version, any type of control mechanism on the particle photon from Losant. How from maybe like a Losant dashboard, we could toggle the onboard LED. And so that is what we're going to do in today's episode. I'm going to show you how to set up an application and workflow in Losant. Is that upside down? I had it upside down. In Losant, so that from a dashboard in Losant, you can toggle the onboard LED on the particle photon. And hopefully this will show you how to set up that simple communication channel so that you can do other more complicated things in controlling your particle photon from Losant. So before we jump into the Losant side of things, let's take a look at the code that's running on our particle photon. It is very simple, 24 lines of code, as you can see here. All we're going to do is we're going to configure our variable LED here to be D7, which is the built-in LED on the photon. And then we have this function called LED status, and it needs to have this signature. It returns an int and then takes a string command. And this is how you have to define a callback function for a particle function that you register with the particle cloud. And this function is very simple. You can see that we take the command in and we say, does it equals ignore case, which means it could be, capital O, lowercase n, all caps on, or lowercase on. Any one of those versions would satisfy this if statement. And if the text is on, then we're just gonna write LED high. We're gonna turn the LED on, and we'll return 1, the state of the LED. Otherwise, we're going to check to see if the command was some form of off, and if so, we're going to turn the LED off, and then return 0, which again is the state of the LED. That's a good pattern there. And then if it's neither of those, if you send in some random string, we're not going to do anything to the LED, and we're just going to return a -1. And this again is a pattern in the particle ecosystem for particle functions. If the function does something unexpected or has bad input, you should return a -1 to give some sort of indication that there was an error. Okay, and that's it. Down here in the setup, we're just going to set the LED pin to be an output so that we can control it. And then all we have to do is register the function with the particle cloud. We do that with this particle.function call, and we're going to name the function LED. So this string right here is how the function will be referred to within the particle ecosystem, and then we're just going to pass it our LED status function that we defined above. And that is all we need to program onto our device so that we can control it from Losant. Okay, so let's set this up in Losant. I'm going to come over here into my applications tab. I'm going to create a new application. We will call it particle control. I don't do descriptions, so just create application. And a lot of times in Losant, you have to create a device it's like a virtual representation of your physical device. We actually don't need that in this case because everything's going to be handled through a particle integration. And to set that up, we're going to come over here to the Integrations tab, and we're going to click Add Integration. And we will just call this our particle integration. It is enabled, and the integration type is, you guessed it, particle. And then we have to put in some information here, our access token, and the rest of this stuff is optional. The access token is very simple to get. You come back over into your particle build, come down to your settings tab, and here's your access token. I will reset mine after filming this video so you can't hijack my stuff. And I'll paste that in there. Now the device name or ID, this is to limit the particle function calls to a specific set of devices. If you do mine here, that means your particle integration applies to any of the devices that are registered to your account within the particle ecosystem. But for me, I'm just going to limit it to this device that we're working with, which I have named Microcast Photon. You can also see that you can limit this through product slugger ID and things like that. I'm going to leave those blank. I don't need any event names because we're not dealing with events, we're dealing with particle function. That's a separate concept. So I'll click Create Integration. And then that should load up here. Great. Now we need a workflow to trigger. And that is what we will trigger from our dashboard. So I'm going to come over to the Workflow tab and click Create Workflow. I will call this the, what do we want to call it? Control LED. That sounds good. Create Workflow. Okay, now you have a list of triggers here over on the left-hand side. And if you have a virtual device created within Losant, you might think you want like a device state change. But in our case, we just need a trigger. And for that, we're going to use a virtual button. And this is what we're going to be able to trigger from our dashboard, which I will show you in just a minute. So we'll call this set LED state. And that's all we need to do for the trigger. That's what we're going to name it, and we'll pass a payload into it from the dashboard. And in that payload, we will pass the state of the LED, true or false, as to whether it is we want to set it to on or off. And so at that point, we just need to decide which version of the function we want to call. So we need a conditional statement here. And remember, the conditional statement is just going to evaluate this expression and then choose the false path, which is the red side, or the green path, which is the true side. And what we will store our value in here is data.state. And that's it. We actually don't need to say equals true or false. Because it's a Boolean, it will, by its nature, be true or false. So that's all we need. Oops, sorry about that. So just data.state with the two brackets like that. And again, we will go on the green side if the state is set to true, and we'll go down the red side if it's set to false. And so all we need at this point is way down here. This is in the outputs section of the node palette, is a particle call. And we need two of them. Oh, there it is. We got it. Okay, so I'm going to copy this and paste it. One for the true side, one for the false side, and we'll wire them up just like this. I love how simple this is. It's just so easy to configure this stuff. And on this side, we'll say turn LED on. And this side, we'll say turn LED off. Like that. And so on turn LED off, it's going to ask us which integration we want to use. That's the particle integration that we just set up. And the function name, remember, is not LED status, but it's the, let's hide, get rid of this. There we go. It's not LED status. It is what we registered it with the cloud, the name here, which is just LED. And so we will set this as LED. The device name, again, we'll do microcast photon in my case to limit it just to that device, the function call in just that device. And then down here we have a function argument. What is the argument that we want to pass? Again, that's this, if we come back over to our code, that's the command. And we want to send it on or off. And what you might be tempted to do here in this string template is to do this, on, because you're sending a string. But this will all be interpreted as a string when you have the argument method set to string template. So all we have to do, we're on the LED off, is set this to off. And that is what it will send down to our particle function. We'll come over here and do the same thing for our turn LED on. We'll call the LED function on our microcast photon device, and we will pass on instead of off. And so that's it, on. Let me make sure I got off here. Perfect. At that point, we can deploy the workflow, and now it is active and ready to go. We just need to set up a dashboard so that we can call this. So let's come up here to dashboards, and we'll do create dashboard. We will call this our particle control dashboard. And it will bring us to this screen that says select block to add. We are going to scroll down a little bit to the input controls. We'll hit customize to add our first block. We will call this the set LED state block. The application that we're going to deal with is our particle control application that we just created. And then we can add some blocks to, or add some controls to the blocks. Now, something very important here is this sentence right here. Buttons are the only control that performs an action. And that's important because when we add controls, we're going to add a toggle switch. That's normally the object that we would associate with turning an LED on and off. We want to toggle it on and off. And so you might want to just toggle this on and off and think that it will change your state on the device. However, as this says, all other input controls optionally provide values to the action. So this toggle will not trigger any workflows or accomplish any actions by itself. It's just a value. And we have two options for that. We can have it be a static value or a dynamic value. If it's a dynamic value, we can associate this with a Losant device, which we do not have in our case, so we will just leave it as a static value. The default value is false, that's fine. And so we have our toggle switch. Now let's add our button trigger. And this is what will allow us to actually take an action. And so we'll change this label to set LED state. And on the click, we don't want to send a device command. We want to trigger the workflow that we just created. So we will select it from the drop-down, which is Control LED. And then the virtual button that we want to trigger in that workflow is our set LED state. The last thing that we need to do here is provide a payload. And remember, we are checking the state. So all we do is open this up. We create a state member, and then we pass it the value of our toggle. And if you scroll back up to the toggle switch, you can see that that value is represented as toggle-0. And so all we do is this double bracket notation in Losant, toggle-0, like that. And so what this will do is when the workflow is triggered through that virtual button, it will send this as the payload with the state that we have selected with our toggle switch. And then our workflow, as we just created, will take care of whether that is true or false, sending the appropriate command down to our device. And so let's go ahead. The last thing that we need to do, don't forget, this default mode is set to locked, which means once we create it, we won't actually be able to hit the toggle switch or set the LED state. So we need to change this to unlocked. And then we can go ahead and click Add Block. And here we have on our dashboard, we have our little toggle switch and the button to actually activate it. So I have my particle photon over here. It's just breathing cyan, so it is ready. It is running that firmware that we wrote up earlier. And I'm gonna go ahead and click the toggle switch to on, and I'm gonna click LED state, and you will see the LED on board there light up, perfect. Toggle it back off, send it down, and it turns it off. Really cool. The delay on this is very small. In my case, it's going to depend on your network connection and things like that, but we're talking about less than a second delay. Let's do it one more time. Switch it on, set LED state. Very quick there. You can see how that. So that is a simple example of how you can control your particle devices from a Losant dashboard. All right, that does it for today's episode. As you can see, very simple. Did not take very long at all to create the infrastructure on the back end of Losant to be able to control your particle photon. So hopefully that gives you some ideas of the things that you can accomplish with Losant and particle. Very cool stuff. If you have any questions, please stick them in the comments below. I am happy to help with that. And for those of you that are just joining, I've stopped doing Daily IoT here on the Daily IoT YouTube channel. I know it's all very confusing, but I've moved the actual Daily IoT, this concept of my daily journey and learnings in Internet of Things and maker projects, over to Instagram. And so if you follow me over there, I post a live video every day that stays on my feed for 24 hours. You can check it out when you're riding the bus or have a few free minutes. You can get the latest IoT tidbit that I'm sharing every day over there. So check that out, please. And also continue to tune into the channel here. I will be posting more videos like this where I explain things in depth, a little bit more polished information to help you with your Maker Internet of Things projects. Thanks so much for watching. I hope everybody has an awesome day. And I don't have a new outro yet because we moved Daily IoT. So we'll just end it with that. Thanks for watching.